Hey friends, it's Robin. Welcome back to my channel. Now that we are in the dog days of summer and pretty much everywhere in the world is breaking heat records, don't worry, global warming is just a hoax. I thought it would be the perfect time to do a recommendations video for the hottest romances that I have ever read. I do want to preface this whole video by saying the entire concept for this video is entirely subjective. Everyone's version of what they find hot and sexy is totally different. It is all about your personal preferences. So you might agree or disagree with the books that are on this list. That's okay. The first two on here are actually by the same author. Theirs for the Night by Katie Robert, which is a short prequel novella before a trilogy. And I would say that this one is definitely the steamiest of the group. However, all of the books in this series are quite steamy. This first book is following our heroine who ends up going to this club on a night out, and she ends up speaking to these two guys who are in the VIP section, and the three of them end up going home and having a very steamy night together. This is the start of a polyamorous romance. The two men are already in a committed relationship and they are bringing the heroine into their romance. This does not have an HEA or an HFN in this prequel novella. It is just their steamy one night together, but the series as a whole does have an HEA. This, I think, was my first Katie Robert, and to this day is still my favorite book of hers. I just really loved the dynamic between all three of these. Katie Robert always does such a good job with her representation, and her polyamorous romances are always fantastic. And then the other book by her is Your Dad Will Do, and this is another one of my favorite Katie Robert books. This is part of her, I think it's called Touch of Taboo series, and this was a series that she started to do, I think, during the pandemic, and they are just super light, super steamy, short novellas. And there is not a lot of romantic development in here. There is pretty much no plot in any of these. It is really just the main characters getting down to business. This does have an HFN in it. The majority of this book is just sexy times between the two main characters. This is following a heroine who finds that her boyfriend has been cheating on her, and when they break up, she decides that she's going to get revenge by showing up at his dad's place and sleeping with his dad. Turns out that the two of them have always felt this kind of intense attraction towards each other, but this one is ridiculously steamy. The next book on this list is Feed by Aveda Weiss. This is one of my favorite books by them, this series, in fact, Yours Insatiably. The way Aveda Weiss tends to do their romances is they have a little novella that is just this really intense, steamy scene between the main characters, and then you get a full-length novel after that following those main characters and their happily ever after and full romance. And Feed is probably my favorite prequel novella. This is following a non-binary moth main character and their co-worker who is a succubus but has been keeping her demon side a secret, and she uses this monster app to bring people for her to feed on so that she doesn't have to feed on people like in public. And lo and behold, her co-worker shows up and the two of them do not get along. They do not like each other. They are completely antagonistic, and they have the steamiest night together. The hero is, like I said, a moth creature, and they have antennae and all of these extra appendages, and they aren't afraid to use them. I would say that this is not necessarily beginner monster friendly, just because our hero does have a lot of extra things attached. So for somebody who hasn't read monster romances before, it could be a little difficult to follow, but they are two of my favorite characters. Pi is actually one of my favorite characters, I think, of the entire year. I just love them so much. And if you want a really, really good, short, steamy monster scene, this is definitely the one for you. The next one I think is going to be a little divisive. It is the Tangled Lies trilogy by Pam Godwin. Here's the thing. This is one of those series where you look at it and you're like, this is not a good trilogy. Like, it's not good. But I loved every second of this trilogy. It is angsty, it is over the top, it is utterly ridiculous, and I loved every single sexy second. I'm gonna keep this pretty vague because the twist at book one be very, very spoilery, and so talking about books 2 and 3 would also be very spoilery, but essentially we're following this heroine who had this intense epic romance with this guy who dies prior to the beginning of book one. The book opens up with her, I think, like a year into her grieving process, and she cannot move on. Someone shows up at her door, tells her that he is essentially going to force her to dance at his club. Things happen and progress from there. You learn how all the main characters are tied together. You learn what actually happened to the ex, and there is a lot of craziness. This series is out of control and it has so many ridiculous tropes in it, but it is so bingeable. It is one of those series that once you start, you can't stop. This is not a series that you can like read one book of and then wait months to read. It is one you binge back to back to back. And the main characters are into a lot of kinky shit, and I liked it a lot. It is definitely not going to work for everyone. Like I said, it is over the top and it really steers into its ridiculousness, and there is a lot of wild twists and turns that require you as a reader to suspend all belief. And if you do want to read the Deliver series by Pam Godwin, I highly recommend reading this one first, because the Deliver series does actually spoil this trilogy for you. There are so many good steamy scenes in here. There is a scene in book 3 that lives rent-free in my head until the day that I die. So highly recommend this one. If you are just looking for something to like binge over a hot summer weekend, make it this one. The next one is Neighborly by Katrina Jackson. This is hands down one of the hottest books that I've ever read. This is one of those books that I read like 2 years ago and I still think about. This is a romance between these two different couples. So one of the couples is married and together and committed, and they have a somewhat open relationship. Other couple is also established, but they are not married. I don't think they might be engaged, I can't remember, and they are moving in with this other couple in like into their duplex. And when the two women meet for the first time, they have the most intense attraction towards each other. And these two couples, since they do have open relationships, allow the women to explore their attraction, and it is freaking perfection. The communication between these couples, the way that the heroes absolutely love their partners and are openly communicative and understanding, and the way that they love each other is so freaking good. I think one of my favorite things about this is not only one, how steamy this book is, but the communication that is required and is actually shown is so, so good. The amount of trust and respect that they have for each other is so obvious in this, and I loved it so much. And again, this has a steamy scene in a hotel room that you will think about until the day you die. It is definitely top tier. The next one I feel like is one of those books that's like, it feels silly almost to put it on the list because I feel like everyone has read it or already knows about this book, but it is Praise by Sarah Kate. This is my personal favorite of the series. I know a lot of people would disagree with that, but this is another ex's dad romance, which apparently is a thing that I like since there's more than one on this list. But this is following a heroine who, she does not end up with his dad for revenge. She actually ends up going there to return something or get something from the ex. And when she gets to his dad's house, he thinks that she is a submissive that someone has sent him, and he tells her to get on her knees, and she does. And it is them exploring this dom-sub relationship that she is entirely new to. I think the BDSM in here is done and handled really, really well. This does have a sex club in it. This entire series is insanely sex positive, which is another thing that I absolutely loved about it. There is absolutely no kink shaming in here. There is no sex shaming in any way, and I freaking love it. And again, this is one of my favorite like dom sub romances. I just think it was done so well in here. After that, we have Hallows Grove by Lee Jaco. I put this one specifically on here because this is, I think, my personal favorite. However, this entire series could honestly be on this list. This is an erotic romance novella series that is following these holidays. They're all completely unconnected. They follow totally different characters, and while they take place around their respective holidays, the holiday element is essentially negligible. This one in particular is set around Halloween, and we are following this heroine who is kind of reluctantly attending this Halloween party that her best friend is putting on for her coworkers. And when she gets there, she realizes that she has to work with her best friend's brother, and the two of them end up acting on that attraction, and the hero is a pleasure dom. And this was my first book in the series, and it is still my favorite. I had never read a pleasure dom romance before, and I need to find more because this was absolutely everything. The hero worships the heroine and will do literally anything to please her, and I lived and died for it. Then the next two are also by the same author. First is Treble by Rilsey Adams. This is a polyamorous romance, probably one of my favorite polyam romances. Nobody writes a novella the way that Rilsey does. This is following this established couple who are also in an open marriage, and the two of them date other people. They are very communicative, which again is one of my favorite things. Right at the beginning of the book, the heroine has broken off with her latest boyfriend, and the hero is thinking about starting something up with this woman that he met online. But the woman will not agree to a date unless she can meet his wife to be sure that he is not essentially cheating and lying about being in an open polyamorous relationship. When the three of them meet for the first time ever, the husband and wife are insanely attracted to the same woman. And the three of them decide to explore that attraction, and it is amazing. Not only is this book ridiculously steamy and have ridiculously good communication and all of that in it, there is a scene in here about the new addition to their relationship getting her period and being in a whole lot of pain, and the way that the two of them care for her was everything. The other one is 8 by Rilsey Adams, and this, I think, really highlights how well Rilsey Adams writes novellas. She just does such a good job of giving you this little peek into the situation, into this potential romance, and leaving you wanting so much more, but somehow also feeling satisfied. And this one did it perfectly. We are following this heroine who, in celebration, has hired a personal chef, but her best friend ends up needing to cancel. The chef is already there. And so she ends up going through with this, and her and the chef end up having a very steamy, food-filled night together. I really, really liked this one. It is really this one intense night that they have together, but this one does kind of have a happy for now sort of element to it where you do see that there is potential for them to have more in the future. The next is Plie by A.H. Cunningham, which I feel like I could just put the cover up here and leave it at that as the reasoning. This is also a BDSM book. The heroine has been a submissive for an extended period of time, and she ends up working with the hero through this club as he is kind of learning to be a dom, and he wants essentially some time to practice on somebody who is experienced in the BDSM world. And they wear masks essentially so that they can't see each other, so that they can remain anonymous. And it turns out that he is the father of one of her ballet students. And so there is not only the BDSM element in here, but there's also kind of a forbidden aspect to their romance. Not only that, but there's also an age gap, and it was just so, so good. Next one is a duet. It is the Say Yes duet by Tasha L. Harrison, and I am going to say particularly book 2. This has a submissive hero, which if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I absolutely love. The hero has known he's a submissive for quite a while, and he has attempted to explore it, but never very successfully. And when he returns to North Carolina for his best friend's wedding, he ends up acting on his feelings for his best friend's mom. If you want a lot of my thoughts and opinions on this duet, I will link my vlog up above and down in the description box where I go into detail, and you can follow along while I read this duet. Again, communication, as the hero is trying to explain his submissive side to this woman who has never explored it before, was fantastic. Her openness and willingness to take care of him was amazing. And then in book 2, they really start to explore that relationship. Next is Being Hospitable by Mika James, which is a super, super short novella. I heard about this one from Mina Reads, and I want to say that this was on one of her STEAMY romance recommendations videos, and it 100% fits the bill. This is actually a sapphic romance, and we are following this woman whose best friend has a younger sister, not like a huge age gap, it was just a couple of years, but essentially she is starting this internship, and it is kind of a competition internship, and she doesn't know how long she is going to be an intern there because it's kind of dependent on her performance. And so she needs a place to stay while she's doing this because she doesn't want to purchase an apartment for herself. And so she ends up staying with her brother's best friend, and the younger sister has always had a crush on the heroine. She ends up acting on that attraction, and the two of them kind of have this forced proximity, semi-forbidden romance because the heroine who owns the apartment feels like she's betraying her best friend by sleeping with his younger sister. The two of them have the best chemistry, and the younger sister is always trying to tempt her, and it is just so good and so steamy, and it's another one that you can read in like a half hour or so. And then the final book on this list is actually one that I just finished reading, and that is Harbor by Rebecca Weatherspoon. And I do want to preface this by saying this is a little bit heavier than some of the other books on this list. It does have some heavier themes. These main characters all end up meeting because they had a significant other that was cheating on them, and they found out when their significant others were murdered while they were together. And so it does open up on a bit of a heavier theme. The rest of this is really these three kind of going through their grieving process and exploring their attraction to each other, even though they know that they are trauma bonding and maybe shouldn't be attracted to each other. So we have two heroes who have been in a committed relationship for an extended period of time. They were in a polyam romance with this other woman who was the partner that cheated on them, and our heroine was engaged to this guy, and the three of our main characters end up coming together, and it's about a year after they lost their partners that they end up exploring their attraction to each other, and they have the steamiest BDSM romance. One of the heroes is a dom, and the other two main characters are subs, and it is fantastic. There is a scene in his playroom that is one of the best BDSM scenes I think I've ever read. So that is it for this list. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the books that I put on this list. Let me know if you have any additional books that you think should be added to this list. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, I will see you all in my next video. Bye.